Hello, angels. Sorry. I know I'm always like, yeah, really trying to put out more videos. It won't be as long before the next video as it was before this video. Wrong. As always, my name is Lavender, and I'm sorry I made you wait so long. I am your host, and as I continue to work on two thinkier video essay-ear pieces that I want to put out soon, I swear, I promise, I pinky promise, as much as that means, it is also time for a recap. And though I normally do these every other month, honestly, I didn't really have that much to say when February wrapped up, and there were a few records coming out in the next week that I really wanted to talk about. So while I'm going to have to save a lot of great releases that came out this week and will come out in the coming months for my mid-year wrap-up, we are, as of the day that I am recording this, a quarter of the way through 2025 already, in the blink of an eye. But what that means is that a ton of records worth talking about have come out. I have already reviewed a bunch of them, and I have taken from all of those reviews that I have done a selection, a slimmed down collection of the most relevant albums, the best, the most surprisingly disappointing, and many of the most popular that I want to talk about. And we're going to run through them, talk about my reviews of them, and my feelings on them in a rapid fire format, as we have done basically as long as this channel has existed. And that's that. I will save my scripted, thinkier content for hopefully within the next month. Please find me in real life and put me down like Old Yeller if one of those two videos is not goddamn done yet. And as usual, we're going to start this list off with what I typically call the disappointment section, though that can be kind of a misnomer because I also just talk about bad records, and sometimes, like in the case of the new Lil Baby record, they are albums that I knew were going to be bad because it's a Lil Baby album. Okay, maybe that's not entirely fair because he has two collaborative records under his belt that I think are okay. But as far as Lil Baby's solo material, I can't name one album that I even kind of think is a little bit decent. And it's honestly kind of a testament to how bad his solo discography is that this may very well be, or at least could compete with his best material ever, his best full album set of material ever. And it is a hard listen. For all of the same reasons that Lil Baby has always been a hard listen. Complete lack of any lyrical substance, extremely generic beat choices, voice that somehow sounds like everyone but is so uncannily bad at the same time. Lil Baby continues to baffle me as to his popularity. This was a relatively big hip-hop album once again, and I just don't know why. I'm starting to think I never will. And oh god, I wish we didn't have to talk about this one. Certainly the most controversial thing, in certain circles at least, that I have written this year, and I got to do a little bit of admittedly clickbaity style release for this as part of a collection of rapid fire reviews. Food House. Several of you already knew what I was about to bring up. I get it. I love hyperpop. I'm a trans femme. This should be my shit. I should love Food House, but I don't get it. I've never gotten it. In this review, I spend way too much time explaining how I'm probably just not in on the it's bad on purpose joke, but at some point I just have to be okay with that and have to say, even if it is bad on purpose, that does not mean that I have to like it, which is the case with a lot of this new Food House record. Unfortunately, that I was kind of hoping it would click with me and I would really care for it, but I just do not. I think even more so than the Lil Baby album, this may be the hardest record to listen to front to back in its entirety, at least that I've heard this year, and shit, I don't know, maybe in the last couple of years. Now we're getting into the real disappointments because this next trio of records I assumed would be good, starting with the new Anxious album, Bambi, a northeast sort of punk and hardcore and emo fusion-y band whose first album I liked quite a bit. I got lucky to get my foot in the door early with this band because of reading Brooklyn Vegan, and their debut lived up to a lot of my expectations, so I was really looking forward to this record, but on it, they lean into the tritest, cheapest, sourest vision of pop punk that I've heard in a long time. And if you're a fan of my content and reviews, you know that pop punk is not a bad thing to me. I gave out a couple of great reviews to pop punk records just last year, but this is done in the way that pop punk sounds to people who really do hate it, which is unfortunate because I saw so much potential in this band. I'm also not crazy about the new Sharon Van Etten and the Attachment Theory album, not because the musicianship is bad or anything. There are certainly a handful of instrumental highlights, singles from this thing that I liked quite a bit, but when all is said and done, robbed of her intimacy, the poetry and nuance of Sharon Van Etten's performances and songwriting do not come through nearly as strong on this record. Nothing on this album is as triumphant as her 2019 record, and none of it is as dejected as parts of its follow-up. And what results is an album that is catchy once or twice, but is really nothing special for one of the most interesting singer-songwriters around. And speaking of which, I really can't believe this new Japanese Breakfast record. Wow. An album that going into this year, or at least once it was announced, I was really, really excited about. I've been a Japanese Breakfast fan for a long time, and after hearing the lead single to this record, I thought that we might be slowing it down a little bit, quieting things down, mellowing them out in a way that her record, Soft Sounds from Another Planet, previously had, which is still my favorite Japanese Breakfast record. And she did quiet things down, but in that space, in that absence, finds almost nothing worth listening to. There is just so much emptiness, and not just sonic emptiness, but creative emptiness. Visions of songs that may sound good if they were performed with any gusto or intensity whatsoever, that are just robbed of their intent and their meaning by how mellow, how quiet, how understated everything is. This is definitely the way that you get intimate without getting nuanced, and that lack of nuance robs Michelle, a fantastic songwriter, of most of my interest in her music. Let's get past that. Disappointments in the can. Let's move on to some of the most talked about records in both the commercial mainstream and by music fans online. Starting with the first record that I reviewed this year, or I guess EP in certain contexts, and that is this Ethel Cain record, Perverts. Her indulgence into the world of drone music, one that was extremely controversial and derisive with her fan base, but I went into this thing with an open mind as someone who's a fan of a lot of drone music, and I think it's okay. I think it's fine. I think it has some interesting ideas. I think it wastes a lot of time, but more so than anything, it has me excited for the recently announced proper second studio album she has coming later this year. And The Weeknd with Hurry Up Tomorrow. I talked about this record at length in my last video talking about The Weeknd's entire discography, so I will not linger on it here too much. I think it is solid. I think the track list is a little bit long, and in an attempt to appease all of his fans and wrap his entire career up in one creative bow, this record is a little bit indulgent for me and definitely has some tracks I would leave behind, but it also has plenty of huge highlights that have already begun to stuck with me quite a bit. I feel kind of similarly, pitchforks and torches for some of the hip-hop fans online about this new Drake and Party Next Door record, Some Sexy Songs for You, which admittedly does kind of abandon its ambition to be a hot and heavy Valentine's Day romance album, but in its place it finds a handful of really creative and really good ideas, really fun songs. I'm surprised by just how much I love tracks like obviously Nokia, but also Die Trying, CN Tower. There are a lot of highlights here, even if they sometimes come back to back with some of the worst goddamn songs I've heard this year. But the worst offender of having highlights but being too goddamn long is, say it with me, Music, the new album from Playboi Carti, which, if you believe the online sleuths, he was forced to release to avoid having to refund a bunch of pre-orders for an online copy of the not yet existent version of this album. And that kind of seems to be the case when you listen to this record and see how haphazardly thrown together it is, how unfinished several of the tracks are. There are speculated but unsubstantiated claims that pieces of this were even finished with AI, which, given Cardi's affiliation with Kanye, that really wouldn't surprise me all that much, although Kanye blessedly does not appear on this album. And yeah, it's about what I expected, given the last couple of years of Cardi teasing and ignoring his own fan base. It is intense, it is spontaneous, it is rough around the edges, and that creates several really exciting, really thrilling moments. But ultimately, as an album, this thing is a weak, full listening experience, and certainly one that doesn't live up to the great two previous Cardi projects. But a record that does live up to the legacy of its very popular artist is the new Lady Gaga record, Mayhem. Honestly, if you drew a line under this album before the last 3 tracks, you're probably talking about the best Gaga album in upwards of 15 years. And I'm not going to let those very mediocre ballads drag down the fact that Gaga feels back in her prime across much of this record, delivering these bombastic, playful, bouncy, flirtatious dance pop and electropop songs, one after another after another. And I talked about some big highlights like Garden of Eden in my review, not even realizing that other tracks like Killa in particular would grow on me so much in the following weeks. Honestly, I think this is definitely going to close out the year as one of the better mainstream pop albums to drop in 2025. Pivoting to the indie scene, to some of the more talked about records, specifically among critics and in music circles online, we got to talk Nicholas Jar and the new Dark Side album, which is decidedly weird at points, the way Nicholas Jar has always been. And while some of those highlights pay off in a huge way, others do not. And it makes for a very mixed bag kind of record, a record that is not cohesive in the way that the first 2 Dark Side albums are so good at being cohesive. And what results is solid, worth hearing certainly for Nicholas Jar fans and for some of its great highlights, but definitely a all over the place mixed bag in the way that his releases typically aren't. I consider this new Squid album, Cowards, to be a bounce back from the UK post-punk act. I didn't think their second album was terrible or anything. I wouldn't exactly call it a sophomore slump, but I was not nearly as excited anywhere on that record as I am by some of the towering crescendos of intensity that the band offers on this third album. I think it returns to a lot of the things that made me like their debut so much back in 2021, and I'm happy to hear them doing it. Even if it's not the best material they've ever made, they still sound solid and right in form, and several of these tracks are still in my rotation. Jane Remover has kept herself busy, dropping 2 of the best singles of last year. She has a new album coming out later this year, and under this shoegaze side project, Venturing, she released this album, Ghost Holding, and it's a much more direct embrace of shoegaze than her 2023 masterpiece, Census Designated, resulting in a solid album, one that is a little bit samey to my ears across the track list. It really feels like it pulls a lot of the same tricks and certainly has moments that feel admittedly just like weaker versions of other better tracks. But wow, when this thing can hit its stride, it can dish out one great song after another after another. So Jane Remover fans, if this somehow slipped by you, or just shoegaze fans in general, definitely some worthwhile material to be dug out of this thing. I feel similarly about the Richard Dawson album, End of the Middle, though this thing does have some highlights that I like quite a bit, including a long indulgence into a wedding day that I find to be one of the most fascinating and interesting pieces of Richard Dawson songwriting ever. As an album, this is not exactly his apex conceptually or sonically. I think we've all heard Richard Dawson do a little bit better, but that doesn't mean that his unique idiosyncrasies and style of writing and performance do not shine through at several moments on this record. He is an extremely unique performer, and that is reason enough to indulge with this record. There are several songs on here that remind me why I love Richard Dawson so much in the first place, and it's hard to ask for much more than that. And to put a theme on the little mini section here of good but not the best that an artist is capable of, the new Clipping record, Dead Channel Sky, which finally, even for me, one of the longest running Clipping defenders, I think this album has some territory where it is so dorky, it is unbearable, finally drifting into the Lin-Manuel Miranda theater rap that Clipping has been, in my opinion, unfairly accused of before. But even those moments come in the mix of some extremely intense, dizzying instrumentation, a really persistent and fascinating cyberpunk and video gamey theme to this entire record, one that pops up all over the place in pretty much every song, and several of the really good world-building style interludes, and yeah, it's Clipping. There's a ton of great Clipping material in here. It is not their most consistent bunch of tracks, and occasionally I find it a little bit taxing to listen to, but the moments that I love and the moments that remind me why I've loved Clipping for so long are far greater and more prevalent than its downsides. Very early on this year, we may have gotten the best Bad Bunny record to date. DTMF. This thing performed well commercially, still has some singles lingering on the Hot 100, and I am not surprised because it is long, but it is a goddamn banger factory, and some of the strange, bizarre, outside-the-box sample and instrumental choices and narrative framing choices that Bad Bunny makes, like Cafe Con for example, absolutely kill it. His willingness to follow his creative whims to strange places really pays off on here, and what results is just an irresistible album, one that, though it's long like all of his records, dishes out highlight after highlight after highlight. I quite enjoyed this new album from The Weather Station, one that I had a feeling was going to be good based on some good singles, and the fact that I really liked her underloved and underrated last record, a much quieter and more intimate companion piece to what was essentially her breakthrough album the year before, and now she is returning to a more vibrant and verbose sonic palette, but doing so as an improved songwriter, and wow, do those improvements show here. I'm kind of surprised this album is not getting the attention of her most acclaimed and most beloved material quite yet, because it's really good. It's really consistent. I like it a lot. I like the sound palette of it a lot. I like how it shows off her unique whims and ambitions quite a bit. I like it. Good album. And if any of you Food House fans stuck around, you hyperpop babies, you should know that I did quite enjoy the new Ada Rook album, Ada Rook of Black Dresses, whose solo work I have been iffy on in the past, but I did like that Angel Electronics side project that she underwent a few years ago, and so I went into this album with open arms and high expectations given how much Black Dresses I've enjoyed over the years, and it is definitely Ada's best solo work to date. Wow, do some of the tracks here go after her relationship with ex-band member Debbie McCallion hard in a way that can be almost a little uncomfortable at points, but that uncomfortability seeps into this record, thrives within this record, and around 4 or 5 songs deep, this thing gets on a hot streak that just does not end. So yeah, if you like hyperpop and its more dizzying, chaotic, and intense side, but Ada's solo stuff never really clicked with you, I felt the same way, and I love this record. Ichigo, Aoba, Luminescent Creatures, long-awaited follow-up to Windswept and the breakthrough album, at least among the American critical circle for Japanese folk artist Ichiko Aoba. In the meantime, her back catalog has been allowed to marinate and become massive retroactive fan favorites for many, myself included, and so there was a lot of anticipation and a lot of hype going into this record, and while it is not the grandest undertaking, I think in that focus, in that minutia, in that understanding of nature and of literally the luminescent creatures that she saw that inspired this record, she finds a lot of beauty, a lot of sensitivity, a lot of gorgeous, gentle instrumental passages, and a very touching and subtle series of vocal performances. I think there's not a whole ton you could ask for as a fan that she doesn't manage to deliver here. I think if this tracklist had tied itself together conceptually just a little bit more, or maybe had a little bit of a grander undertaking in the first place, I think you'd see a lot more people calling this the album of the year so far. Finally, in this section, I want to talk about the new self-titled album, working with one hand here, from Source of Dream, who I had the pleasure of interviewing, Ringtone Magazine, link in the bio. When this record came out, Catherine was delightful, very funny, and this album is bombastic, exciting. It exists within the genre of wizard sleaze, which genre-wise brings together the sounds of hyperpop with grunge, shoegaze, a little bit of Pacific Northwest indie rock, and features many stylistic signifiers that go well beyond genre. Trust me, I would know. But what results is a set of roaring, exciting indie rock jams, and I am totally happy to take that conclusion. In my opinion, this is Source of Dream's best record to date, and one of the better, I don't know, whatever the word hyperpop fucking means anymore, albums in that genre this year. Definitely a must listen. And if you're the type of person who is scared of the word hyperpop, but you're a big fan of the indie rock stylings of, say, someone like Jane Remover, this should also be on your list. Now, I want to talk about 4 albums, the last 4 albums we're going to talk about, the ones that really, really struck a chord with me in these past 3 months. My favorite records of the year so far, and they are, frankly, a size above anything else. Starting with Oomphy, friend of the channel, Jasmine Vorti, with her debut album on Phoebe Bridgers' Satisfactory Records, a label whose output so far, it is fair to say, I have been a little bit mixed on. But I was a big fan of Jasmine and an even bigger fan of the singles from this record going into it, and wow, did this thing live up to my expectations. It is gentle, it is subtle, it is touching, it is beautiful, and it is not afraid to explore her most vulnerable and emotional creaks. It has so much of what makes great singer-songwriter music present. Jasmine just emerges as such a fully formed artist on such a early record in her career, and so aware of her strengths, playing into them. In my opinion, this is just a remarkably vulnerable and personal album, and one that seems both inspired by and an advancement of so many of the great trans singer-songwriters that have come before her. That record was quickly followed by the futuristic R&B, dance, sex album of the year, Easy, Shoe-In, within this extremely specific micro-genre I've just made up off the cuff. Obviously, I'm talking about FKA Twigs with Eusexual, a record that was led off by 3 great singles last year, so I had a feeling I was going to like it, and damn if it didn't live up to my expectations. Banger after banger throughout most of this record, a really tight, really good, expansive ballad to wrap it up. The track list is all killer, no filler, slimmed down. Twigs does it again. She's got 3 studio albums under her belt, and I think all of them are just spectacular. This absolutely lives up to the caliber of its predecessors. Great record. Maybe my favorite record of the year so far. Next up, and probably the biggest surprise of these 4, and I don't really know why that is Panda Bear with Sinister Grift. And I say surprise even though I love Animal Collective, and honestly, they've been on a hot streak recently. I liked the band's last 2 records quite a bit, and it's not like Panda Bear doesn't have masterpiece solo experience under his belt. He made fucking Person Pitch after all. And honestly, I fully expected to like this album, to enjoy it. I like most Panda Bear solo records, but I did not expect it to knock my fucking socks off. I did not expect it to, in an extremely vulnerable way, dig into the intimate details of Noah's feelings following his divorce. I did not expect it to be such a dark exploration of his psyche with a sonic palette to match, and I did not expect it to be filled with so many amazing hooks regardless. The Deacon production and the sound of this record is just wonderful. It reminds me of so many different eras of Animal Collective assembled together into such a great, dark, brooding, murmuring style. The kind of thing that you expect Panda Bear to be the last Animal Collective member to sound like, and yet he is just killing it. This is the best Panda Bear solo record since Person Pitch, and honestly, I think it goes toe-to-toe with anything that any of the Animal Collective guys have done in a long time, and there are some real good records on that list. And last but certainly not least, album I've been talking about all year is one of my most anticipated, lived up to the hype, and that is Weather Day with Hornet Disaster. Yeah, this thing is bulky, and if you release a record this bulky, there's a good chance that one or two songs you may could slim down. And sure, I could take my pick of this record, but would I? Honestly, I don't know. And that's just because I'm so excited for Weather Day to return. And not just to return, but to return with the same unbridled ferocity that I always wanted to hear from a second Weather Day album. And though the quality of the recording and the polish of the material has increased greatly from Come In, the thunderous sonic qualities and the explosive, unpredictable, dizzying array of instrumentation has not gone anywhere, and yet Sputnik has elevated their levels of thematic consistency but individuality amongst these tracks that are expressing their own cohesive thoughts and feelings and metaphors on anxiety and depression and mental fortitude and memory and nostalgia, and yet they all feel so cohesive. They feel like they belong together in a way that great albums do. It's another record that I came into with sky-high expectations, and it hit the absolute home run that I was hoping it would. So yes, that is the last album I want to talk about. If you made it this far and you want some homework to take home, please start with those last four records: Jasmine 4T, FK Twigs, Panda Bear, Weather Day. And in a couple of months, I will be back to once again talk about those four for sure, as well as several others when I recap my favorite records of the year thus far. But before then, I swear to hand to God, may she strike me down if I lie again. I have two video essay style videos that I have been working on for a while, and which may or may not feature albums talked about in this very video, that are approaching ready to go. One of them is approaching. It's almost. I'm close. Thank you for watching. Please hold me accountable.